I never asked for war. I never planned to be a courtroom brawler, a strategist of land warfare, or the kind of man who spends his days diagramming property lines and dealing with lawyers. All I wanted was peace, quiet, solitude. But peace is a funny thing in America. Sometimes you have to fight to keep it. My name's Daniel Carter, retired logistics officer. 2 decades in the Army, the last 10 with special clearance at the Pentagon. When I left the service, I didn't want fanfare, or medals or speeches. I just wanted space. So I bought it, 160 acres of thick, wild land in central Texas. Oak groves, creek beds, and a ridge with a view so wide you could see storms rolling in from 40 miles away. It was paradise. No neighbors, no noise, no rules. It was mine. I paid cash, every cent of my retirement and savings. The land had some history, sure. Old farming boundaries, unused mineral rights, and an abandoned easement that went nowhere. But I was meticulous. I hired a private title team. I pulled handwritten ledgers from the county archive. I even went as far as cross-referencing Civil War-era survey maps just to be sure. When the deal closed, I cried. First time in years. It wasn't about the land itself. It was about the promise, the silence, a place I could finally call home. I built a modest house in the middle. Modern, off-grid, solar-powered, rain-harvested, with a woodshop out back and a porch that wrapped all the way around. I planted pecan trees, dug a fishing pond. I even let some deer hunters lease the far edge in the winter just to keep the ecosystem balanced. 2 years went by like a dream until the trucks showed up. At first I thought it was a lost convoy. Flatbeds, hauling concrete tubes and wooden trusses, the kind of stuff you'd see on a new subdivision. I walked down the path from my workshop to investigate. That's when I saw it, the trailer. A double-wide mobile office plopped down right in my eastern clearing like it belonged there. It had tinted windows, fresh paint, and a banner that read, Oak Springs, Phase 2 Development. There were men walking around with clipboards, bright vests, and radios. One of them, bearded, mid-30s, hard hat, seemed to be in charge. I approached calmly. "Hey," I said, "can I ask what you guys are doing here?" He turned around, friendly enough. "You a neighbor?" I chuckled. "Sort of. I own this land." He squinted. "You own which lot?" "No, not a lot. I own all of this. These 160 acres. This field you're standing on? It's mine." He blinked, confused. "This whole tract is part of Oak Springs Phase 2, he said, tapping his clipboard. "You're on lots 41 through 120. I asked him to show me. He took me into the trailer. Inside, blueprints were taped to every wall. Lines, lots, cul-de-sacs, even a pool. A whole neighborhood, right across my property. Look," he said, pointing to a map. "That's the Eastern Road extension. Over here's the model homes. And this," he said with a grin, "is gonna be a dog park." I stared at it in silence. My pond, the one I stocked with catfish, was marked as a community water feature. "I think there's a mistake," I said. He flipped through a binder. "We pulled this from the county zoning office. Oak Springs HOA submitted the development plan last year. But they don't own it." He smiled like I'd misunderstood. "Sir, this project's already funded and permitted. I'm just here to build what I'm told." I thanked him politely, then walked away, heart pounding like a war drum. I drove straight to the HOA headquarters. It was only 15 minutes away, sitting in a fake luxury strip mall with a coffee shop and a nail salon. Their office was polished, marble tile, designer lighting, and a receptionist who greeted me like I was a customer. I told her I needed to speak to whoever was in charge. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from Bradley K. Thompson, president of the Oak Springs HOA board. He looked like a shampoo commercial. Gelled blonde hair, white teeth, pink button-down rolled at the sleeves. His handshake was limp, his cologne aggressive. "So, Mr. Carter," he said. How can we help you? I think there's been a mistake, I said. You're building phase 2 of your subdivision on my land. Bradley smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. We've been working on this expansion for years, he said, and according to our records, that tract was acquired from a real estate trust back in 21, fully zoned, titled, and clear. Then, your records are wrong, I said, because I bought that land in 2020. Title is in my name. I live there. Bradley paused, just for a moment, then said, well, if there's an error, we're happy to compensate you. Our board approved a fair offer, $1.5 million. I stared at him. That land had appreciated to over $4.5 million in value, not to mention my house, my workshop, my water rights, and the wildlife zoning I'd secured through the state. You want to offer me pennies on the dollar? I said, for land I already own. Bradley raised both hands. We don't want to fight. We're all neighbors here. I'm just offering a solution. You're offering theft wrapped in paperwork. He flinched. I stood. You have 48 hours to, remove all personnel and construction equipment from my property. He didn't say anything. As I left, I noticed a legal pad on his desk. He'd written my name at the top, then underlined it twice. The next day, bulldozers cut down 30 trees. A concrete mixer rolled onto my eastern field. Survey stakes went in with orange tape, and a crew started trenching what looked like sewer lines. I called the sheriff. He came out, polite but indifferent. I showed him my deed, my title, the coordinates. He sighed. I can't enforce civil boundaries, he said. If they're building illegally, you'll have to take it to court. Isn't trespassing illegal? If you can prove it conclusively, yes, but that's for a judge to decide, not me. And in the meantime, he shrugged, you may want to get a lawyer. That night, I walked my entire perimeter with a flashlight and GPS, took photos, tagged every stake they'd driven into. My soil, my land, my home was being chopped, paved, and carved like it was already theirs. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They thought I was just some old man living in the woods. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to learn, was that I spent 20 years designing supply chain systems for battlefield operations. I coordinated deployments across continents, moved thousands of soldiers under enemy fire, and wrote threat assessments for some of the most secure facilities in the world. You don't survive a military career like mine without learning how to plan for war. And this was about to become one. The next week, they poured concrete for sidewalks. I tried filing trespassing complaints, but the sheriff said it was a civil matter. Said the property lines were too muddy. I showed him my deed. He said, take it to court. So I did. Something better. I took it to strategy. You see, I used to be a military analyst before I retired. I didn't just fight wars, I planned them. And these HOA clowns, they weren't developers. They were bureaucrats playing real estate tycoon with other people's money. But I had something they didn't. Patience, documentation, and a well-laid trap. First, I hired my own surveyor. Then a second one. I had them both stake the true boundaries of my land using the oldest records from the county clerk's office, not the HOA's sketchy redrawings. Then I got a drone. Documented every inch of construction, where they were pouring. Foundations, where trucks were unloading materials, and, most importantly, where they were crossing the legal boundary onto my land. I didn't stop them. Not yet. They built roads, brought in electricity, started framing houses, 80 of them, right across my property line, all while I smiled and waved. Because here's what they didn't realize. Every brick, every nail, every inch of infrastructure built on my land without permission was trespassing, and every home sold on my land was about to become a lawsuit. But I didn't want just damages. I wanted the whole thing. I wanted reversal. And the only way to make that happen was to catch them in the act after money had exchanged hands. So I waited. By month 4, they had pre-sold 75 units. And finally, They crossed the line in the most literal way possible. They began, trenching through a protected wildlife zone on the far end of my property. That area was part of a conservation easement I had registered with the state. That one mistake triggered federal environmental violations. Game on. I sent a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA, the builder, the title company, and their financial backers. No one responded, so I filed a lawsuit, not in county court, but in federal court, citing land fraud, trespassing, unlawful development, and environmental damage. Then I went one step further. I contacted the buyers. Using public record databases, I got the contact info for every person who had signed contracts to buy a home on my land. I sent them all a registered letter explaining that the HOA and developers had sold them homes on land they didn't legally own, and that their titles would not be recognized. Panic spread like wildfire. Real estate. Agents started backing out. Lenders froze their funding. The HOA tried to silence me with a restraining order. It failed. The judge tossed it out and scheduled an emergency injunction hearing instead. By that point, my legal trap had closed shut, because not only did I prove that the land was mine, but I proved they knew it was mine. Buried in their internal emails, uncovered during discovery, was a message from a former land surveyor. He had warned them 2 years prior that the Phase 2 land claim was likely invalid because of a missing quitclaim deed. They ignored it. Worse, they deleted the message from official HOA correspondence, but not from the server backup. I had them dead to rights, and I wasn't settling.